Welcome to the Motivation Without the Hype podcast with your host, Jez Perez. He's an author, high-performance coach, and motivational speaker. This show brings you inspiring messages and interviews to unleash your greatness in life and in business. So let's get started.
Welcome to Motivation Without the Hype podcast show. My name is Jez Perez, a former procrastinator into an action taker. We bring you inspirational messages and interviews, including motivational insights, tips, principles, and proven strategies that you can take action on without the hype in unleashing your greatness in life and in business. Now, we appreciate you plugging in and spending time with us. And we have a very special guest, and I'm super grateful to have her on our show. Her name is Dr. Shahana, and she is a professional speaker, family physician, mental health expert. Now, she has worked with multitude of national organizations, including University of British Columbia, Scotiabank, and Remax to help the audience to gain more clarity in their mental health. As a lead physician at one of the British Columbia's largest youth health centers, much of Dr. Shahana's career is focused on those struggling with their mental health. Now, her insights are highly sought after and is being featured in multiple major media, including CTV and Global. Now, she is best known for her emotional literacy for better health in TEDx talk as a panelist at International Women's Day. She has served on the UBC Faculty of Medicine Residency training program and is currently a national director or accreditor for the College of Canadian Family Physicians. Dr. Shahana, welcome to the podcast show.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Man, I am so honored that you're here joining us on this podcast show. I'm totally excited. Really, gets me going because of what you do in your line of field of work, and that is to empower, inspire others through what you do that you're passionate about. So please tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, I love that question so much. And I was actually at a previous engagement that I had, we were chatting about this, going that if I was at a dinner party right now, I'd probably introduce myself, just like I did prior to our recording, that I'm first and foremost a mom. I'm a mom of 3 young boys, all under the age of 7. Yes, I'm a family doctor. And then I'm a speaker. And that journey started, and I think all of this, for those who are listening too, you feel that spark in you. And I felt that spark long before medical school. And I remember someone telling me that if you can keep that spark alive when you're working those 48-hour shifts, when someone is testing you and you don't know the answers, and when you feel like your self-esteem is on the ground, if you can feel that spark of wanting to do something beyond the 4 walls of a clinical office, then you will have won. And I remember at the end of the 8 years of going through this grueling journey and getting spit out the other end like a hamster wheel, I thought I still have that. And I don't know what it was, but I had the desire, just many like you guys are listening, to do something more. And I would sit in my office and see patient after patient after patient. And I realized something that I should have realized 8 years prior, that nobody sees a doctor when they're well. Nobody sees a doctor because they just want a social visit. There's always an issue. Always an issue. And more often than not, it was an issue regarding their head, their mind. And I think for the longest time, I thought, and I'll be honest, and this was a part of my TEDx talk, I really thought, I'm too good for mental health. I thought I will support and advocate and help you with yours. But when it comes to mine, I'm good. I've got that package all wrapped up until I didn't. Until it came completely and utterly apart after the birth of my first son. And it was then that I found myself in the depths of despair, as many, many women are, with something that we don't talk about, what's called postpartum anxiety and OCD. And it took me a year. It took me a year to pick up the phone, not talk to my own doctor, because we were friends, we were colleagues. I couldn't suffer an ego hit like that. So I called an anonymous line, a physician helpline, and I told them how I didn't want to be here anymore. I told them how my family was better off without me. I told them all of these things that I hear that my patients tell me now. And after telling my story, they told me, you're going to have to see a psychiatrist, right? You're going to have to start medications, right? And I said, actually, I feel much better. Thank you. Hang up. And it wasn't that fast, right? Wow. It was this idea that, and this is the truth behind mental health. We all talk about, talk to others about your mental health and get support. But what does that mean? That means having these really uncomfortable conversations with a stranger where you are given a nanosecond to look into that stranger's eyes, and do they lean forward or do they lean away? Are you met with acceptance that I got you, I'm holding you in this? Or are you met with, oh, I don't know what's wrong with you, right? And that is the power of my job now that I sit in the chair, because I get it. I get what it feels like to have panic attacks that bring you to your knees. I get what it feels like to not want to be here anymore. And I get the fact that depression doesn't just feel sad, you feel nothing. You feel nothing. My mom used to ask me, Shahana, tell me, how do you feel? Nothing. So this is the truth and the reality behind mental health. And that is the impetus that led me to stand on that stage in my TEDx talk and admit that I was a hypocrite, that I was a complete hypocrite, that I thought that mental health was a you problem. It wasn't a me problem. And that is why I reframe mental health as meant for all health.
Wow. It's really challenging when you've got this knowledge, you've gone through the medical science experience and journey, but it's not until you actually go through it yourself, it's like, okay, I know what I'm talking now. How was that? How was that a challenge for you? I mean, you hear about it, you learn about it, but going through it yourself and overcoming it. Can you share a bit of that experience? Because a lot of people that are listening right now are actually going through a similar situation. May not be the same situation, but could be in that same aspect.
Absolutely. I think the first key thing, and this word is being probably overused somewhat, but it does take a certain amount of vulnerability. It does take a certain amount of courage, of course, but I think the key parts is that we expect mental health to be black or white. Share your whole story and then what? It doesn't have to be like that. You just need to start getting your feet wet. You have to start finding that person, whatever healthcare professional that might be, to go, okay, do I feel something with you? Do I trust you? Can you hold me in this journey, right? And that's the other piece is we always talk about, we'll just see a counselor. It's not as simple as that. It might take 1, 2, it might take 10 people before you feel like, yes, this is the right fit. This person can actually support me in this journey too. And then I encourage you too, is that with people, it doesn't have to be family. It could even be close friends. And this is how I started. My own dad didn't know what I was going through, and no offense to him. It's because I had too much pride and ego as the medical doctor daughter to have it all together. It was not even a friend. It was a colleague at work that we were working late one day. And I said, you know what? I'm kind of going through a hard time here. And we had a conversation. You know what she did? She turned to me and said the 2 words that I wish everyone will hear when they share their story. And it was, me too. Me too. I get it. It doesn't have to be the same story. It just has to be that feeling that you're not alone in this. And she went on to share that how it just happened to be that she had a really difficult journey with her postpartum period as well. And it was that moment that I thought, oh my word, it would be selfish of me not to share my story. And it would be, negligent of me not to do something about what I've learned.
How hard was it just to reach out? I mean, going through that experience, and it's so key that you mentioned about vulnerability, because not many people want to head to that road of vulnerability. But for you as a doctor yourself to reach out, usually people come for you for help, but you yourself is, okay, I need some help. How did you come to that point where you got into that vulnerable state? Because that part is really challenging for a lot of people to actually reach out. How did you make a conscious decision? Was it because you had enough? What made you to say, you know what, I need some help. I'm raising my hands. I'm going to have this conversation. Can you walk us through that experience?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think in all stories, there's the truths that you hear and then the truths that are behind the curtain. And what was behind the curtain for me was that, in fact, and I've only, once again, haven't shared this with many of my own family members, was that since the age of 4 or 5, I started having some symptoms. I didn't know what they were, and I was just really bothered by them. But I did what any 4 or 5-year-old would do. I just kind of stuffed them way, way, way down deep. And with this help and support of my mom, she, kind of gave me love and support, but we didn't know what this was. It was a very uncomfortable, now that I know on the other end of what it was actually called pure OCD, or a type of OCD where you only have these intrusive thoughts, these awful, bring you to your knees thoughts without the compulsion. So nobody recognizes that you're having them. it's a subset of OCD. And it wasn't until sitting in my medical school lecture and a slide flashed before me, and underneath in really small font, it was subset of OCD, pure OCD. And I picked up the phone to my fiance, now my husband, and said, I am not crazy. There's this thing that I have, and it's actually, you can see it on a functional MRI. And finally I had the words. I think in physical health, I think a lot of the times, I always say you're unique as a snowflake, but when it comes to mental health, a lot of us need the words to put behind what we are having, because it makes us feel, once again, like there is an explanation. So little did I know that postpartum OCD is one of the most rampant and one of the most underdiagnosed conditions in the postpartum period. So of course, here I am heading into the postpartum period with a genetic predisposition for this, and I fell flat on my face with not just postpartum anxiety, but a lesser known countertype, postpartum OCD, where you start to have really intrusive thoughts of, could I hurt or harm my kids? And of course, that brings you don't want to be here anymore. That just brings you to your knees. And I say this because every time I share this story, if you could only feel the pressure in my chest and the tightness in my gut, you would realize that this is not easy for me to admit. But I've seen women end their own life because of this. So it's time that we start breaking these walls and saying that this is actually something that happens. And I had a British actress reach out to me over Instagram who listened to my podcast, and she said, you gave me the words. You gave me the words. Now I know what I have. So that was my truth and my reality, and it still is, but it was, when you asked me what was it, it was the feeling that I recognize in a lot of patients, in the sense that my family would be better off if fill in the blank, right? And it was that comfort in that. And that was a danger sign to me, because I would be the one counseling my patients out of that. And finally I realized that, oh, this is me. This is my narrative now. And I had gotten to that point. So that was the pick up the phone moment. And that was the moment that everything in my life started to, it's not fast. None of this is fast. Don't expect it to be fast, but it's a gradual, slow progression to realizing what your own truth is and still loving yourself despite and because of that.
Wow. And I just want to acknowledge you for being courageous and sharing your story, because, a lot of people, particularly with mothers who are actually going through the exact same experience, but different scenario and different journey. And I just want to acknowledge how courageous you are to share that, because people need to hear this. And I'm so honored to go through this journey in this podcast episode, because a lot of people right now who are listening, whether it's in Australia or around the world, this could actually be their breakthrough. And so I wanted to say kudos. I want to acknowledge you. I want to say thank you for doing and just unpacking your journey. So thank you so much. Can you just share with us about, emotional literacy for better mental health? I know that has been your message throughout your personal journey, but can you just share with us what it is, and those who are actually listening for the first time, what would that be, and how's that for better health, mental health?
Absolutely. Yeah. I studied kinesiology as my undergrad. You go through, 6 to 8 years of medical school after that. And I thought I got this. I understand what health is, what nutrition is, what wellness is. How did I get here? How did I get in front of the reproductive psychiatrist office with a diagram of my thoughts? And this is a true story. And she looks at my husband and going, is she always like that? And my husband said, yeah, she's always like that. It came to the point that I realized that when you look on my website, drshahana.com, you'll see the optimal health pyramid. And this was scratched on the back of a napkin one day when I was going through a particularly difficult time, because I realized that something had to give here. How could all of this knowledge and education, feel futile? And it wasn't futile, but the reason it felt that way was because I spent all my time, you'll see, in the middle part of the pyramid, which was eating better and moving more and making sure my sleep was adequate. I couldn't yoga my way out of this. I couldn't drink enough fish oil to get myself out of this. Like, it's all supportive,
Right,
but it's
yeah.
not the be all and end all. And
Yeah.
I really I'd wait for the wheelie as it would load my yoga video, feeling so anxious,
Really?
going, this is defeating the purpose. Like, this is not the way the sequence should come out. And that is why the foundation of my optimal health period, what I abide by, is two things: think better and connect deeply. Train your brain and have the right people on your bus to help do that for you. So training your brain really means two things. It means understanding what our emotions are telling us, what I call the science of emotions. And then it talks about self-awareness, this inner roommate, this conversation that you have constantly in your head. How can you notice that, witness that, and learn from that? And I always say, I am not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, but maybe I am my perceptions.
Wow.
Maybe I am my perceptions.
Yeah.
Right? And that is one of the key pieces that you can only start to change your perception. I call it to my patients your perception prescription, which is a mouthful. If only I could write them a perception prescription.
Right? Yeah.
And we know the science backs this up. It really does. In an amazing study by Dr. Alicia Crum, who actually showed that housekeepers, when they were told if they were getting actually good exercise, that group, when they were doing their regular job, actually showed a lowering of their blood pressure and an improvement in their heart rate. Whereas the other group, who didn't perceive them to be doing physical activity with their normal job, didn't show any changes. So this stuff works, and we have the evidence to show it now. So in all, self-awareness to me is the foundation, is the pinnacle that we need to just start being more aware of. And how do you do that? Is I have a very simple acronym. You can find it on my website. I created it because with 3 kids under the age of 7, I have enough fodder to need this every single day. They provide me the content for this. So, and it's simply, the first N is noticing. You have to start to forget. People will often ask me, well, I don't know how I feel. I don't care. Just notice what you feel in your body. It doesn't have to be what you feel in your mind. Are your shoulders tense? Do you have a headache? Is your stomach hurting? But we live in a culture of I'm fine. I'm good. I'm great. I'm fine. My kids are not allowed to use the word fine because it can't be fine. Give me something else, right? So you're not fine. What are you? Are you amazing? I know for most of the time I thought I was just anxious. I wasn't anxious. I was depleted. That's a very different word. So noticing is first, and naming it. Once you notice, give it the right name. Use a great app you can find that's 99 cents. It's called Mood Meter, designed by Dr. Mark Brackett from Yale. It's so easy, so simple. Maybe many of your listeners have heard it, but if you have kids, do start doing this now. We call it name it to tame it. They need to know what they feel, right?
Love it.
Right? And I think one of the things is that I grew up in a household, and, no offense to my parents, but boredom was a 4-letter word. We weren't allowed to feel bored. Oh my goodness. Anger, absolutely not. Frustration, heavens forbid. Like, it only had to be the good stuff, the good. But then I realized that what if your emotions are trying to tell you something? So is there such thing as a good or bad emotion? And the truth is there's not. It's only comfortable or uncomfortable emotions. We all need to stop believing that that's a good one and that's a bad one. Because if you feel like you're feeling a bad emotion, guess what? You block it. And emotions have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's just like a ripple of water, right? They do but we get stuck in the middle because we don't want to feel anything that's quote unquote bad, right? The next S, we said notice was 1, then name, so N 2. The next one is story. Figure out the story that you're selling yourself, the stories you've told yourself or the stories you've sold yourself. We're all telling ourselves a story, but you need to start poking holes in your own story, but that's hard. I really do believe I'm the overworked mom that does everything. Okay, part of that might be true. But is it actually true? I was at a speaking conference this weekend and the house didn't implode. They actually did quite well without me for the weekend. So, maybe I'm not all that there is. So I think a lot of that requires a little bit of a gut check, an ego check, and a story check. But when you've had 30, 40, 50, 60 years of that railroad track in your brain with the same story, those paths are well groomed. And trust me, it takes a long time. It takes a long time to get off that track. And that's where you might need the help of a professional. I'm not saying that that's not the right thing to do, but these are all free things you can do now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I think that's important. Like self-awareness is key. I mean, like to self-empowerment is taking ownership and responsibility and having that self-awareness, like taking ownership of what you've gone through. So, noticing it, naming it, and actually, and identifying what that story is and actually doing something about it. And yes, you do need to reach out. And I think that's the important element is it's great if you do it on your own, but if you have someone helping you along the way, then it just goes into momentum rather than trying to pick up the pieces, taking you forever. And I find that really key. So you have a 3-step program, and one of them is about building emotional resiliency. Can you share just your insights how someone can actually build their resiliency and understanding the emotional health, but also reaching out for help as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the first things too that you have to realize, like we talked about it, is it's not going to be linear. It is going to take some time as well. But, right? That all of that can definitely play a role here. But when you're talking about building your emotional resiliency, I talk about 2 aspects because it's really easy for me to sit here and be self-aware, start to think about how you're feeling. But when I'm in my clinical role and I'm dealing with youth, because that's my main job between the age of 12 and 24, a lot of them are so scared to become introspective. Because I had this youth just the other day who said, "Oh, my word." She's like, "My counselor told me just to park all of my feelings." I said, "And?" She's like, I don't have a counselor, so I just have a parking lot full of feelings. And I said, "Oh, okay. How long have you not had a counselor for?" "A year." So I said, we need to realize this, that when you have a feeling that you don't like, you'll do one of 3 things. You will suppress that feeling, you will deny that you ever have a feeling, numbness, or you will blame. It's your fault. It's my parents' fault. It's my boyfriend's fault. It's my boss's fault. It's your fault that I have that feeling. Are you a suppressor? Are you a denier? Are you a blamer? Or are you a little mix of all of those 3? So this patient was a complete denier. It was like, okay, parking lot. Well, we got to start going back into that parking lot too. But introspection can be really hard, and it can be hard because one of the key things that I see with youth who have been through an enormous amount of trauma is this idea of, we throw this word around all the time, and I don't always believe it, but this idea of self-love. I'll ask my youth, "Do you love yourself?" And they'll tell me many 4-letter words back, basically saying no. No. "Are you kidding?" "Absolutely not." So I said, what are we doing here? Why do you even care about being here if you don't care about yourself? So they'll kind of look at me going, I guess the lady's got a point here, right? So I said, forget self-love. I said, it's self-acknowledgement. To me, self-acknowledgement is the bridge between self-awareness and self-love. You gotta acknowledge where you have come, and that's for your listeners too. I had this patient the other day. He was 14. He has smoked everything under the sun, tried every drug under the sun. Dad handed him his first alcohol bottle at age 11, quit most things except pot and alcohol at the age of 14, and said, Dr. Alibhai, I still am smoking a ton of pot. I said, but you've quit cocaine. You've quit LSD. You've quit all of these things. Like, do you even take a second to go, I've come this far? And he left that room with a smile on his face. So these are some of the key points about building emotional resiliency is, how do you deal with an emotion? Are you a blamer, suppressor, or denier, right? And basically, do you have the capacity to acknowledge yourself? We always feel that acknowledgement guarantees leniency, but in fact, it's the guarantee for future progress. So you need that someone in your life to say, look at how far you have come. And the antidote to all of this is progress. It's progress.
Wow. Guys, you need to re-listen to that again. Just that segment of paragraph has been so key. And I think if we can just target that is the bridge, self-acknowledgement, going through progress and pace to the fact that you're actually moving forward. I think a lot of people are just so accustomed to just looking at the negatives and looking at the stories, but not seeing the good things of those experiences that they come and overcome it. That is brilliant. Really, really brilliant. And one of the things as well, people are going through a journey, like how important is mental health? Like how important is to be aware, to start checking in and having that self-acknowledgement, going through that route. How important is, because not many people, they say, oh yeah, mental health, whatever. But those who are actually, starting to think about it, like how important is that to actually be aware and start working through their mental health?
So I like to reframe it in this way. Some people, you're right. There's been so many terms like trauma, like self-love, like mental health that we hear now so much that we actually feel, oh my word, like everybody has a diagnosis these days. Is that what's happening? And people start to just stop listening.
Yeah.
But when I tell you emotional health, what do you think of? Like, what do people go, oh, okay, how I manage my emotions, what my emotions teach me, how flexible I am with my emotions. Okay, I can get on board with that. So this is the analogy I give people. Emotional health are the pixels. Mental health is the picture. Emotional health are the pixels and mental health is a picture. I see the picture. As a clinician, I see the picture of all the hundreds of thousands of opportunities I've had, you've had, we've all had to play with our emotional health, and most of us are suppressors. But then I see the resulting picture. I had a patient the other day who's only 17 and landed up in the hospital, 17, with pancreatitis from alcohol. And I said, I just kind of got to ask. I said, why the drinking? I said, just tell me, like, did you go through a breakup? I just want to know. I can treat your pancreatitis, but I'm just interested in you. And she said, no. She's like, I wasn't sad. I said, so what? I was bored. Right? We always think mental health is sadness. It's not. I call it the amigos of mental health. You're numb. There's 3 amigos: numbness, loneliness, boredom. Those are the 3 amigos of mental health. They are in the shadows. They're right there, right? So these are some ways to get around. Mental health doesn't mean a diagnosis. Just because you mention it doesn't mean I have to medicate it. Please, mention it to me. I won't medicate you.
Wow.
Right? So frame it with emotional health. I think that also helps. It's a little bit easier to digest.
Wow, that is amazing. There's so many questions that's coming through my head, but no, that's going to be part 2, and I can't wait to have you back on immediately.
Thank you.
Look, you've just through this alone, guys, if you're listening right now, get connected with Dr. Shahana. We've got all the links provided on the show notes. It's there. She's amazing. Check her out. Even check her at TEDx as well. It will change your life, literally. So, I ask this question to every guest that's on the show. What is your meaning of motivation without the hype? And how do you use motivation for your personal success?
Oh, I love that too. Do you know what? For me, really, I had this question framed in a bit of a different way, but it was really asking one of the keys to success, which I would say motivation without the hype really should be, but it really is the intersection between passion and perseverance and perception. Those are the 3 things that you need. Those are the 3 ingredients, right? Because you can work hard, but what are you working towards? When I was a little girl, we'd go skiing, I think the rope tow, what's pulling you to the top? What is pulling you to the top? What is guiding you to the top? And that should come from that spark, like I talked about at the start of the episode. This idea that you have something within you. And it doesn't have to be, and the goal of that spark should never be financial. Financial will come as a secondary benefit. The goal of that spark should be impact, right? So motivation without the hype, the answer to that should be impact. Because the more that you can impact people, the motivation will come by itself.
Wow. And again, my brain is exploding. Like, yeah, wow, impact. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Shahana. Like, you are awesome. And it's such a privilege and honor to have you on the show. Guys, again, for more information, how you can get in touch with Dr. Shahana, please look at our show notes. It's all there provided on the show links, her website. If you do want to reach out to her email's there. And also, please, you got to check out her TEDx talk as well. It will change your life. Now, if this episode has been helpful and uplifting, we would love for you to write a review to inspire more listeners to get plugged in. We will continue to provide high-value content in each and every episode. If you don't mind sharing this podcast show on social media by inviting others, it would mean the world to me. Every time you tag me or tag us, we will get the opportunity to share those posts, and together we can make a difference in the lives of others through inspirational episodes just like this. So there you have it. In closing, continue to unleash your greatness and tell yourself that I can, I will, and I must, and we'll see you on the next episode.